Hey, Dolphins, today is your one-stop shop for everything Miami Dolphins, even into the offseason. So make sure you subscribe because you don't want to miss a thing. We've got daily Dolphins videos for you during the offseason. So subscribe to the channel and let's get it going on Dolphins Today. NFL offseason. Well, for some, and the Miami Dolphins, unfortunately, in that category sooner than expected or hoped. And however you break it down, the Miami Dolphins 2023-24 season comes to an end over the weekend against the Chiefs, and in disappointing fashion. So here we are on Dolphins Today, and like we mentioned in the open, we're bringing you content every single day. And here's what we got coming up on today's show. A lot of questions surrounding Mike McDaniel and what his future is. The front office has some important decisions to make, and not just with Mike McDaniel, but the entire roster, which brings us to our off-season rumors. What's going on with Conor Williams? He's a free agent. Will the Miami Dolphins elect to offer him an contract extension? Because a lot of interest from around the rest of the league as a staple in the middle of any offensive line at that center position. And how about on the other side of the ball with Xavien Howard? Could he be one candidate for taking a pay cut? Obviously, the Dolphins roster has plenty of guys that are owed a contract extension and now in free agency. So we're going to talk all about it. And last but certainly not least, Terron Armstead spoke to the media, and the retirement word came out. Yeah, that R word had a lot of people talking, and the rumors are heating up. So we'll break it all down. So buckle up, dial it in on this edition of Dolphins Today. And we got to start from the top, right? Saturday was a painful reminder that the Miami Dolphins' postseason woes continue, and they span more than 2 decades. And with the Detroit Lions beating the Los Angeles Rams on Sunday, that means the Miami Dolphins now hold the NFL longest active streak without a playoff win, going all the way back to 2000. Again, Detroit won. So now the Miami Dolphins. It's been way too long since this team has won in the postseason. And unfortunately, that's starting to become the narrative with Mike McDaniel. And you start to use that terminology, is his seat warm? Is he on the hot seat? Well, 1-6 against teams with a winning record in 2023 doesn't do yourself any favors. 0-2 in the postseason's not something to be particularly proud of. And 4-10 in games played in December and January. A lot of things stacking up against the second-year coach, or the coach who just finished his second year as a head coach. So I ask you, do the Dolphins need to make a coaching change? It starts at the top, and with the Dolphins being the in-season Hard Knocks team, we saw a lot of that footage with Mike McDaniel, and I think he possesses a presence to be a head coach in the National Football League. But that narrative, and I hate using that term, narrative, but with the substance, that's what's starting to build around Mike McDaniel. So let me know in the comments, do the Dolphins need to make a coaching change? Type Y for yes or N for no. My take is rather simplistic, but also simple and straight to the point. Mike McDaniel, in 2 seasons as a head coach, has 2 playoff appearances. You look at this roster for the Miami Dolphins, and I think to a certain extent in the regular season, he got the most out of it, and injuries started to take over. That's a part of the game, and I'm not making excuses for him. But at this moment in time, heading into the offseason, I'm not ready to turn my back on Mike McDaniel quite yet. But that said, I acknowledge the fact that his December and January record is not good. The postseason has not been good to Mike McDaniel, 0-2 in the postseason. And having or not demonstrating the ability to have his team ready to beat winning teams in the National Football League are all 3 things to consider. But I think he has at least another year to prove himself as a head coach in the National Football League. So a lot to prove still. The book is not closed on Mike McDaniel. I think he's the future leader of the Miami Dolphins, at least for the immediate future. Now, coming up, we're going to talk Conor Williams extension. Is he a guy that you, as the kids say, give the bag to? Is he a guy that's earned that? I will let you know what I think and what this Dolphins offense looks with him and without him. But first, I want to tell you about today's presenting sponsor, Factor, which is America's #1 meal delivery service. And as we've turned the calendar into 2024, everybody's posting their New Year's resolutions on Instagram and social media, and that's fine. But how about taking it a step further rather than resolutions, but making choices that lead to success? That's where Factor comes in, because they can take out the inconvenience of grocery shopping, meal prepping, doing the dishes, and instead you'll get ready-to-eat, delicious meals delivered straight to your door, fresh, never frozen, dietitian approved, and oh yeah, they only take 2 minutes to heat up as well. The cleanup is simple, and they are delicious. I mean, we're talking the Chipotle pork chop, the tomato basil chicken, roasted red pepper filet. These are all delicious options, and in addition, Factor has over 55 weekly add-ons, so you'll have a ton of nutritious, flavorful options to help kickstart those successful choices. Don't take my word for it. You got to go to factormeals.com/FinzChat50 and use code FinzChat50 to get 50% off. That's factormeals.com/FinzChat50 and use that promo code FinzChat50 for 50. That's right, 50% off. And don't worry, that link's going right in the comments and the description. We made it easy on you. Factormeals.com/FinzChat50. Use code FinzChat50 for 50% off. In my humble opinion, Conor Williams represents the guy that you build around on the offensive line at that center position. And say what you will, there were some errant snaps, and I hate to cherry pick a play here or a play there, but in that first game of the season, seems like ancient history against the Chargers. There were some issues with the snaps, and that game in Week 9 against the Kansas City Chiefs, that last play on the field for the offense where Tua fumbled the snap. You could say it was offline a little bit. He's got to catch it, this, that, and the other. Conor Williams represents a key building block of this offensive line, and the reason this offensive line, in my humble opinion, overachieved as a whole for 2024 has a lot to do with the play of Conor Williams at that center position. And furthermore, I think the Dolphins certainly felt his absence when he was lost for the season with the torn ACL. So let's look at the 2023 stats. There's a lot of different ways to evaluate offensive line play, but remember, Conor Williams suffered a torn ACL in that game against the Tennessee Titans on Monday Night Football, was gone for the year from then on. But 497 snaps, just 1 sack allowed, played relatively clean as well. And that Pro Football Focus grade, it's not the end-all be-all, but it is a very good benchmark, a good measuring stick, and Conor Williams was among the best centers in the National Football League. And sometimes you got to simplify it even further. Here's what the Dolphins offense looked with Conor Williams in the lineup. Here's what they looked like without. Perfect 9-9 comparison in 18 games for the season, including that playoff game against the Kansas City Chiefs. You say win-loss is most important? Well, that is pretty telling with Conor Williams, 7-2, 4-5 without him. Offense was better, points per game-wise. And I know it's one player, it's an offensive lineman, but all of these point towards the direction of Conor Williams being incredibly valuable for this offense, better on the yards per game as well. Just 8 sacks allowed in 9 games with Conor Williams, and this is not him individually. This is the entire offensive line. They allowed 25 sacks in their final 9 games without Conor Williams. So lots of ways to break it down, and I ask you to let me know in the comments, how important is Conor Williams, and is a Conor Williams contract extension? Scale it for me, 1 through 10. Now, as we flip over to the defensive side, I think the final parting words with Conor Williams is that he represents the most important free agent to sign on this Dolphins team. Conor Williams, take nothing else out of this video. I believe Conor Williams needs to be re-signed as a Miami Dolphin and not let go in free agency. But to the other side of the ball, on the defensive side, Xavien Howard, a popular topic of conversation when you discuss Miami Dolphins offseason rumors, did not play in the last 3 games. Well, started that game against Baltimore in Week 17, but was injured rather early on, missed the final game against Buffalo, missed the playoff game against Kansas City. And when you think of Xavien Howard, he's part of this Dolphins secondary that was a strength for the team for the most part, but I think that had largely to do with the return of Jalen Ramsey, because we saw Xavien Howard elevate his level of play when Ramsey came back. And early on in the season, and really throughout the entire season, it felt like there was always a little something missing in that secondary, whether it was Eli Apple not playing up to his ability, Xavien Howard being injured, Kader Kohu was kind of a roller coaster up and down. But with Xavien Howard, you look at his stats individually compared to the rest of his career, and just about every statistical category shows a decline in productivity. He was tied for 71st, and I don't really get too concerned with the solo tackles as a cornerback, but interceptions numbers were down. He had the one week 2 against the New England Patriots, and as far as targets, 35th in the league, and allowed 44 receptions in those 71 targets. And again, you guys know I'm not the biggest Pro Football Focus fan, but it is a benchmark and a telling way to evaluate play. 55.1 overall season grade. That was near the bottom of cornerbacks that were everyday corners, and his lowest PFF grading of his career. And you know Xavien Howard was going to be asked about his future because of his contract situation. He was signed back in 2019 or a 5-year deal, so he's one of the highest paid players for the Miami Dolphins. But asked on his future with Dolphins, Xavien said, "My 8 years here, I have loved it. Whatever happens, I'm with it." So very simply put. And I thought a solid follow-up from the reporter about the rumors of taking a pay cut for Xavien Howard, and a pretty smart response from Xavien Howard saying, if your boss asked you to take a pay cut, would you? So, certainly something to think about, but I also think it kind of shows where his mindset's at. Xavien Howard not ready to take a pay cut. Now, put your prediction hat on for me. Will Xavien Howard be back next season for the Miami Dolphins? If you think he'll be rocking the aqua and orange, go ahead and type back. But if you think his contract combined with his decreased statistical level of play is enough for him to get the boot, go ahead and type see ya. Now, we'll close it out with the retirement rumors surrounding Terron Armstead. This from Finn's Extra earlier today on X, revealing to reporters he is yet to decide whether he will continue his playing career and if, in fact, retirement is on the horizon. So, look at Terron Armstead, 5-time Pro Bowler, proven offensive tackle in the National Football League, All-Pro in 2018. And this season for the Dolphins, did battle a lot of injuries. Remember, he had that injury in Week 3 against Buffalo, took him out for some time. Overall, he played in 11 games, and Miami was 6-5. And speaking of Pro Football Focus, he was among one of the better offensive tackles all season long when he was in the lineup. And like Conor Williams, I think this offensive line was much better when Terron Armstead was in the lineup because, again, he's a proven veteran player in this league that really provides the production anytime he's in the lineup. The Pro Bowl selection is more evidence of that as well. And when asked about his future, here's what Terron Armstead had to say. A very thoughtful individual, very, very smart and intelligent player as well. Went on to say, 2023 was Super Bowl or bust. I love the game, and I'm chasing one more ring, but I won't be a guy who continues to play after his body tells him he can't. So again, I think a very mindful response from Terron Armstead, who's always been a cerebral guy, who has always demonstrated the ability to have the knowledge of something bigger than football, understands what it takes to be a locker room veteran guy, a leader of the team, and so much to consider for Terron Armstead. I hope he is able to go another year for the Miami Dolphins, but if he does, in fact, hang it up, I certainly understand. And if he does, well, the Miami Dolphins would have more questions to answer at the offensive line position. It would be a huge hole at the left tackle position. You're looking at Keon Smith, maybe even Kendall Lamb moving over from right tackle to left tackle. That's what they did at times when Armstead was injured this season. So, no matter what happens, I can promise you this, when breaking news does go final, we've got you covered. We'll have a video for you. So maybe Terron Armstead has an announcement coming up, whether he's coming back or, in fact, if he is retiring. Either way, we've got you covered here on Dolphins Today. I want to thank Jack Lauderay producing today's video, helping make Dolphins Today possible. And as always, make sure you subscribe to the channel as we continue to grow, trying to reach our next milestone. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Dolphins Today.